In Nassau County, New York, an executive there is interested in creating a team of really special deputy sheriffs to support the county in times of crisis or emergencies, such as in riots or if there's a natural disaster and the like. This is a really, really good idea. Now, I got onto this idea because Jared of Guns and Gadgets, I was listening to one of his videos tonight, and he had some interesting questions and thoughts, and I want to supplement some of his comments. I'll put a link to Jared's video down below. But most importantly, I want to explain why I think this is a great idea for some reasons that may not be obvious and may not even be obvious to the executive out there in Nassau County. This is a great idea, and let's talk about why when we get right back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and author of many Second Amendment-related books, including Disarmed, What the Ukraine War Teaches Americans About the Right to Bear Arms. All right, a fantastic idea that I wholly support by Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman has been discussed in the media recently, and Jared of Guns and Gadgets did a video on it, and the title of Jared's video, "This Executive Hires Gun Owners as Private Militia." Okay, and I'll put a link to Jared's video down below from Guns and Gadgets. I listened to this, and he had some questions about this idea, and I wanted to talk about it for a few minutes because I have some things I want to add to the topic. So just to bring you up to speed on the issue, County Executive in Nassau County, which is out on Long Island, by the way, that's east of New York City, Bruce Blakeman, had this idea and has an idea to create in Nassau County special sheriff's deputies who can be called up in the event of an emergency. This makes a lot of sense, right? If there's a natural disaster, it could be a major fire, a tornado, a hurricane, could be riots. One just has no idea of the different types of black swan, totally unexpected events that can occur, and sometimes local police can be overwhelmed and need support in various ways. So Bruce Blakeman, the county executive there, has created a program, if you will, where local licensed gun owners in Nassau County can come together, get some basic training, and then are available sort of as like a reservist or as a reserve squad to be called up by the county to help protect the county in the event of natural disasters and the like. Now, according to some of the reports that I've seen, some of the typical anti-gun types, pro-government types, it seems to me, in Nassau County are complaining about this. There's petitions going around saying this is a terrible idea. We don't like this. We always want more government to solve problems. The usual nonsense. We don't like gun owners. The typical stuff is going on. Jared and Guns and Gadgets did a pretty good job covering some of the stuff in it. You can look at the video and get some more details. But anyway, here's what I think is missing in this. Now, there's a lot of discussion here about how this supports the police and is good for police and all that in the event it's necessary. So what I want to do in this video is just provide two additional sets of information that I think speaks to what Bruce Blakeman is trying to do here, and I applaud his efforts. I think it makes a lot of sense, not just from a policing point of view, to supplement and support the community in the event these people are needed. I think there's some other advantages to this kind of program that may have been overlooked. The first thing I want to say is there is actually a long history in the United States of this sort of civil defense, or what they're called in the United Kingdom, the Home Guard. So let me just give you a little bit of history, and then I want to give you another really amazing idea that I have as to why this is great in terms of supporting the Second Amendment after I get through the history here. So to begin with, in World War II, and I'll just use this because it's a very straightforward example. In World War II, in the United Kingdom, for example, you had something known as the Home Guard. Now, the Home Guard was really an armed citizen militia that supported the British Army during the Second World War, and what their job was, and there was like literally over 1 million people participated in this. It was usually like people that were too young or too old or not healthy enough or disabled. They couldn't serve and be sent overseas to fight the war, so they'd volunteer as part of the British Home Guard to protect military installations, to protect critical infrastructure, to patrol whatever it was, to make sure that the homeland of the United Kingdom of Great Britain was being protected. And again, That, to me, is exactly the kind of job that these reservists in Nassau County can contribute to if there's ever a situation where the police are called out and they're all in one place, or they all have to do certain things like active police activity. These reservists will be able to do things like crowd control or protect infrastructure or protect the malls, gas stations, whatever it is. They can be there to supplement the civil authority, just like the Home Guard did in World War II in the United Kingdom. But in the United States during World War II also, and discussed afterwards, is something called the civil defense. So in the United States during World War II, you had something called the civil defense effort. And I'm going to read some interesting stuff to you in just one second from a report that was filed on October 1st of 1948. That's right, 1948. That was many, many decades before I was born, probably decades before many of you were born as well. And we're going to talk about that in one second. But the civil defense was a part of the American infrastructure. It really was a form of localized militia that, again, would help protect Americans and American infrastructure. And thank God no one invaded the United States. Hawaii, I don't believe, was technically a state on December 7th, and they were not invaded. There were some attempts at sabotage, coincidentally, on Long Island, where Nazis, landed off a submarine and things like that. We don't need to get into those stories. But other than that, by and large, the United States homeland was pretty safe. And a reason why it was safe, I think, is in addition to the fact that everyone in America had rifles. The apocryphal statement by Admiral Yamamoto of the Japanese imperial forces said that the American homeland could never be invaded and occupied because there was a rifle behind every blade of grass. A very famous quote from Admiral Yamamoto of the Japanese imperial military in World War II. Now, again, that quote's likely not true. It's apocryphal, though, but that is clearly true. And the Home Guard in the British world and the civil defense here in the United States played a major role in that. So it seems to me that County Executive Bruce Blakeman is being inspired by these historical examples of people that are not part of like the formal military, or in this case, the formal law enforcement services, being able to step up and supplement and support the community in terms of defending the community against certain civil unrest or natural disasters or who knows what. Because again, the notion of the black swan, made very popular by a philosopher, author, financial guru, Nassim Taleb, a black swan event is something that you don't foresee at all. It hits you out of the blue. You have no idea it's coming. Sometimes it's referred to as the unknowable unknowns, or the unknown unknowns, something that comes out of the blue. 9/11 would be a great example of this. No one ever saw people taking planes and converting them into bombs. That was an unknown unknown on September 11th, 2001. So again, I think it's a great idea to have these reservists in place, and there's certainly a historical precedent for this. Now, let me give you some language that supports this, not from me, but from a report submitted to the United States Secretary of Defense in 1948. I think you'll find this quite interesting. And then we're going to turn to why this idea of Bruce Blakeman is very good for the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, and I really support it. But let's turn to this report from 1948. Specifically, there's a book, and I'll put a link to it down below, entitled Civil Defense for National Security. It was a report to the Secretary of Defense. It was completed and submitted in October of 1948 by the Office of Civil Defense Planning. It had some really good ideas that I think are equally applicable today. Let's see what the report said in 1948 that we can still learn from today in 2024. It readily becomes apparent that the United States now must plan and operate its defenses on an all-inclusive concept. It no longer is difficult to visualize an attack on American cities, which would require earnest planning by serious-minded men and women with their nation's welfare and their own lives at stake. Planning and organization which cannot wait for the attack to occur. Prior to World War II, England planned and organized her civil defense 4 years before it was used, and the people were conditioned for it and organized accordingly. Japanese could not believe that attacks would reach her shores, and accordingly was ill-prepared in civil defense procedures and facilities. Germany had only a partial conception of the needs and was hampered by administrative muddles. It should be said that while civilian defense in this country in World War II was not called upon for action against enemy attack, it served many useful purposes. It is not forgotten that when air raid wardens patrolled the streets during blackouts, there were fewer crimes. It is worthy of remembrance that auxiliary firemen and policemen who served ably without pay probably saved the taxpayers millions of dollars. It is still of record that forest firefighters trained by civilian defense continue to function in useful activities. It is also a record to be remembered that 10 million people enrolled in civil defense were mobilized for action and performed many useful tasks. Now that's not the Four Boxes Diner, and that's not even county executive there in Nassau County, Bruce Blakeman. This is a submission involving the federal government and the Department of Defense in 1948. These notions of preparation are not invented by preppers in 2024, as that derogatory word may be used by anti-gunners and anti-Americans as I see it. No, this is common sense. This is how nations stay strong and not become weak. So, great idea here by Bruce Blakeman. I think what he's developing here, and I think every county and every town and every city should have some sort of reserve program just like this that we're seeing in Nassau County. And this may be the start of something big. We'll see. Now, with that said, let me turn for a moment about why I really like this idea from the perspective of what's good for the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Okay, we've already talked about this, why I think it's good from a perspective of public safety, and why I think it's good from a perspective of historical basis of that's been done before and successfully done so. So with that said, now let's look at this through the prism, if you will, of the Second Amendment. Now, here is it very important, and this is the one thing, if I could say one thing that Jared over at Guns and Gadgets to contribute to his conversation he's having about this topic, it's this. Every single anti-gun law, every single gun control law, whether it be assault weapon bans by the federal government in 1994, quote-unquote assault weapon bans by Illinois today, or by California, or even Governor Kathy Hochul's ban of the sale and purchase and use, in many respects, of body armor, guess what they all have? You know what I'm about to say. They all contain exceptions. For whom? For law enforcement. If you look at all these anti-gun laws, whether it be at the federal level, the state level, the local level, all of them, whether it be involving owning, buying, acquiring semi-automatic rifles, magazines that hold more than 10 rounds, 50 caliber rifles, body armor, doesn't matter. All of these laws exempt from their prohibitions and their restrictions law enforcement. And in some cases, it's also exempts retired law enforcement, like the LEOSA law, H.R. 218, but we don't need to get into LEOSA now, but it's just another example where law enforcement is exempted, and in many instances, in many of these laws, retired law enforcement is also exempted. So the reason why I bring this up is this. If the way I would structure a program like this, that Bruce Blakeman is doing, maybe he hasn't thought along these lines, maybe he has, he just hasn't said, I don't know. I would be thinking that if you are deputized, if you are a special sheriff agent, whatever you want to call, whatever title you want to call these people, they're essentially deputized reservists in a law enforcement agency. They presumably have ID cards that say they're law enforcement. They may have badges. They have some sort of letter or something that indicates they're law enforcement. So to me, one of the benefits of this program, if not the primary benefit, a secondary or tertiary benefit, is that if you're law enforcement in Nassau County or in the county in which you live, guess what? You should be exempted from all these nutty anti-gun, gun control laws that prevent you from having these kinds of weapons and magazines, if we ever live in such a world. So if I were, for example, Greg Abbott in Texas, or if I were Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, frankly, I would be thinking, and if they were in this room right now, I would tell them what I would say, look, take a look at what County Executive Bruce Blakeman is doing in Nassau County, and you should consider doing that for large swaths, if not everyone in your state. Turn them into effectively law enforcement. So that way, if Chuck Schumer ever takes over with Joe Biden or whoever is handling Joe Biden, and they manage to pass some sort of federal assault weapon ban or some sort of magazine ban or some other nut law that they want to ban nationwide, there undeniably will be exceptions in that federal statute for law enforcement officers, peace officers, military agents, and so on and so on. So it seems to me that get ahead of this now by deputizing in various ways your citizens so they will fall within those exemptions designed for law enforcement. Because the reality is, I'm not a big believer, as you can imagine, that government agents get special treatment over citizens. Now, that may or may not be a legal problem, but it's certainly a moral problem and a practical problem. So I don't like that at all. So again, I think what Bruce Blakeman is doing in Nassau County is a great idea. I think it's going to be good for public safety in Nassau County. He is looking down the chessboard, and just like the British who set up their home guard 4 years before World War II began, Bruce Blakeman is getting ahead of the curve. He's getting ahead of the problems, because remember, it's not just about having guns. It's not just about having people with blue uniforms and a cute hat and a badge. You also have to give them some basic training and experience. And by getting them on board now, even if it's just limited training, it doesn't have to be robust, crazy training, just basic training. When the time comes, when that storm hits, when the hurricane hits, when the tornado hits, when the rioters come out of New York City to attack Long Island and the homes out there, you will have a plan in place, including manpower, and you don't have to go mother may I to the federal government for support, or go mother may I to the governor, Kathy Hochul, for the deployment of the National Guard, like New York City had to do with the subways the crime on the subways just recently. So again, I applaud Bruce Blakeman for his effort. I think there's a lot of good that can come out of this, not just for Nassau County. I think it should be a model for the rest of the country, and we should pay attention to this very carefully. So I applaud Jared over at Guns and Gadgets for sort of bringing this to my attention. I caught this in the car, and I'm glad I did, and I hope this contributes to the conversation as we continue to protect our right to keep and bear arms and to protect this great country, the United States of America. All right, folks, hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to follow me on X at 4 Boxes Diner, and please subscribe here. And again, we'll see you again soon here at the 4 Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.